Welcome back to Keeping BZ, the show where Zach and I choose a game to show each other and we hang out and discuss things related to the game or not related to the game in a podcast-like way. And today we're looking at kind of a more forgotten Indiana Jones game. This is Indiana Jones and the Infernal Machine, which came out in '99. This is the PC port we're playing, running through GOG. Good Old Games is the version. And this also got an N64 release, I think, like a year later. So, if you're wondering what the gameplay of this one's like, if you've never heard of this game, it plays like the old Tomb Raiders. It has that tank control-like feel. It's platforming, but it's very realistic kind of platforming where you have to time your jumps very specifically.
Time to go to work.
So this game's development's interesting in that this was mostly the same team that made the previous Indiana Jones game that came out a few years prior called Indiana Jones and the Fate of Atlantis, often called the best Indiana Jones game. And what's interesting is, despite the fact that that was a point-and-click adventure game, it's the same team making this game. So this was also made by Hal Barwood, and Hal Barwood was like the designer. He directed the game, and then he also wrote the script. Like, he did write the script for Fate of Atlantis. He also directed that game. And he just said, hey, Indiana Jones is the perfect game, perfect franchise for a big action-adventure game. And it's like, well, yeah, duh. I mean, that seems like kind of a no-brainer. They had made Indiana Jones games at this point for, the NES and the Sega Genesis and a whole smorgasbord of games throughout the 90s that varied in quality, to put it lightly. But while this game has been kind of long forgotten, I think more people are more familiar with its PS2 and Xbox successor, Indiana Jones and the Emperor's Tomb. There's definitely things I like better about Infernal Machine that we're going to get into as we get deeper into this. I will say, though, that having played a little bit of the original Tomb Raiders before playing this, in some respects, I do find the controls of this game clunkier. Indiana Jones definitely turns a lot slower than Laura. He also doesn't have a quick turn button like Laura does, at least none that I could find while I was playing it. But the other reason I wanted to do this game is because whenever I see videos of like bigger YouTubers play this game, they always make it look like the worst game ever, and they mostly just kind of make fun of it and then turn it off after a level. And I've beaten Infernal Machine when I first got it a number of years back, and it is clunky. It's very clunky, but the level design I really like in this game. I like a lot of aspects of the way it's designed. I like the voice actors. I like the writing, too. Like, Hal Barwood's a really good writer. I think he captures the feel of the movies very well, though it's going to be a bit before we see our first cutscene. So, just like Laura, you're collecting treasures. Though unlike Laura, at least as far as I understand from the original Tomb Raiders, collecting treasures was just like an extra thing that you did. It's just another little thing you could do if you wanted to up your score in the game. Indiana Jones and the Infernal Machine, you actually get something from collecting the treasures. In this case, you use the treasures in between levels in a little in-game shop you use to buy healing items and extra like ammo and stuff like that. I actually really like that feature, and I'm surprised Laura didn't adapt that. But as it is, we're going to get a little deeper into this, and obviously we're going to talk a bit about the movies. So just so I can stop for a second, Zach, what was your first experience with Indiana Jones as a franchise? I assume you probably heard of it when you were growing up.
Oh yeah, definitely. Pretty much everything I've ever watched referenced Indiana Jones at some point. Although I didn't actually see any of the movies until high school? Pretty sure it must have been high school. You lent me a collection of the first 3 movies, and then we eventually also were able to watch Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, and let me know when you're ready to start talking about our opinions on the movies. But yeah, I didn't get any experience with the Indiana Jones trilogy, well, I guess quadrilogy by the point I watched them, until very much later.
Yeah, I naturally grew up with them. I I got that box set of DVDs that I lent Zach. I think middle school maybe, and I watched through all of them, and I loved those movies. I loved all three of them back when I was a kid. I wanted to buy all the video games. I really wanted just to get really into the Indiana Jones stuff, and watching, and particularly it was actually the just smorgasbord of extras that was on the DVD set that just made me go, man, I want to make movies. This looks like so much fun, just seeing the ways, just all the technical wizardry they did back in the days before CGI, when they were really pushing these special effects forward. And this, of course, was in the lead up to Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, and that was coming out in 2008. So I really wanted to get into more Indiana Jones stuff and leading up to that movie. And even back in the day when I saw Crystal Skull, I don't think I liked it as much as the originals, but I enjoyed it at that tender age when I watched it. Just this past year when Dial of Destiny came out, Zach and I decided we're gonna rewatch the Indiana Jones films and revisit them and see how they've ultimately held up, and how in 2024, like, especially because when Dial of Destiny was coming up, myself and many people are just like, okay, I guess they're making another one. Oh my God, Harrison is so old. Why are they still doing this? I guess he's still up for it. But I guess this is also the last one. No spoilers for Dial of Destiny, but they're not going to make another Indiana Jones film with Harrison after this. It's pretty clear at the end of that movie that they are done. And so now that we've watched the original movies again, where does it all stack up? Well, it was actually surprising. I mean, not surprising in a sense. I mean, obviously there's no debate. Raiders of the Lost Ark is the best movie. It's on a whole level of its own. It is just simply one of the best action-adventure films of all time. Great characters, incredibly well choreographed action sequences, amazing sound design, special effects that, some of them don't hold up, but even the ones that don't hold up still look really cool just because of the effort they put into them. Just ultimately, it's just the best paced, best put together film of the entire series. And shockingly, Zach and I came to the conclusion that Temple of Doom is not just the black sheep, as it's often known as, of the Indiana Jones franchise. Zach and I think Temple of Doom's the worst. We didn't expect that opinion, though, because it still has its moments. Like, it still has those fun kart racing sections at the end of the movie, like the minecart stuff. All that stuff's fun. But genuinely, and I know people talk about, Short Round and Willie sure are annoying characters. They suck. But the movie, it's still part of the Indiana Jones trilogy, and it has its elements of quality to it. Those people are unfortunately wrong. Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom just straight up has a bad script. It's full of bad humor, a romance that just doesn't work because it just feels very off. Like, Indiana Jones just doesn't even feel like the same character that he is in Raiders. Him and Willie don't have good chemistry. They don't play off of each other very well. All of it, the movie just feels bizarre. Like, it doesn't even feel like the same type of tone as Raiders. And that could still work, but the execution doesn't. So it's, and then of course, we can talk about the racism of how they portray, creepy, weird foreigners that are mystical and eat monkey brains. And it's just, it's not a good movie. It's just weirdly dark and bizarre in a way that just doesn't, like, I understand that some people say, oh, well, if it's dark, that's not a bad thing. Well, here it just goes too far. It's so grim. Short Round's annoying. Willie's annoying. The humor's bad. The movie just doesn't work. I was shocked. And you might be thinking, well, where does Kingdom of the Crystal Skull stack up then? Well, Kingdom of the Crystal Skull was a lot better than we expected. Obviously, it's not as good as, like, Last Crusade or Raiders, but Temple of Doom is, Kingdom of the Crystal Skull is surprisingly just more fun, I guess is the way I put it. Like, I find Mutt, despite the fact that I'm happy they did not bring Mutt back for the 5th movie, I can say wholeheartedly that Mutt is a better tag-along character than Willie or Short Round. I know that he gets talked about negatively a lot, but I still think Shia's character is still much more likable and has better chemistry with Harrison than either of the characters in Temple of Doom. So, it's a lot of things. But yeah, Zach, if you want to go into that a bit, you can.
About Kingdom of the Crystal Skull or Temple of Doom, or just either or?
Just in general, yeah, or comparing them.
I feel like the darkness in Temple of Doom doesn't work because it's totally inconsistent. It feels like a much more childish movie, until certain parts where the villain is ripping out people's hearts and throwing them in lava. Then it's just like, well, okay. Because early on, there's, Willie's screaming at a bat. Indy and Short Round are arguing over a poker game. And then later on, you get to the actual Temple of Doom stuff, and it's kind of a tonal whiplash that I usually find tonal inconsistencies kind of fun. I can't explain why. But for this movie, it felt like it didn't really know what it wanted to be. And I agree with Brandon, the Indy in Temple of Doom is not the Indiana Jones from the first movie. It just isn't. Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, it's a stupid movie. I won't deny that. But it's stupid in the right ways, where I felt like Temple of Doom was stupid in the wrong ways. I enjoy the action scene. It goes on a little bit too long. But to be fair, I kind of felt like action scenes going on a bit too long is something that happens in every Indiana Jones movie, I'll be honest. But the chase in the forest where Mutt and the villain are having a sword fight, I thought that was fun. I actually do like the villain in Crystal Skull. Last Crusade's a better movie, but I like the villain in Crystal Skull more than the villain in Last Crusade.
Yeah, I would say that the Russian psychic lady definitely has more of a presence than the American guy in Last Crusade, who doesn't have as much screen time.
Now President Truman calls us the Central Intelligence Agency.
So this character of Zach is Sophia Hapgood. She was actually Indy's love interest in Fate of Atlantis, and she's brought back for this game.
Battalions for that. It's my job to worry about more.
Okay, yeah, I don't know anything about Fate of Atlantis beyond just that's the one where you could punch Hitler, right?
Remember your Bible?
Oh no, that's the Last Crusade video game.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so before Fate of Atlantis, they made a point-and-click Last Crusade game that feels like the prototype for Fate of Atlantis. And in that one, you basically play through the events of the movie, but you can also, do stuff like that too. I mean, you'll get a game over if you do it. But it's just extra stuff they threw in there to kind of play around with people that, know the film pretty well. And you can't... So the scene where Indy gives the diary to Hitler, and Hitler signs it, you can punch Hitler in the face. No, Zach, I mean, I know you're not the biggest point-and-click guy. I know you and I like Sam and Max, but I think you would really like Fate of Atlantis. It's just a good story. It's just, to me, many people call Fate of Atlantis like the Indiana Jones 4, and I kind of agree. I mean, I would call it the Indiana Jones 2, but I kind of agree. Because it's just a well-written story, and plus it's a choose-your-own-adventure as well. Not only does the game have, just a good story with good puzzles, it actually has multiple pathways you can take through the story that have different outcomes.
Okay, that part I didn't know about Fate of Atlantis. All I've ever heard about it is that it's a LucasArts game, and that's really good.
It actually, and the different paths you take actually have different types of gameplay. There's a path you can take through the game that primarily focuses on point-and-click puzzles. There's a path you can take through the game that focuses entirely on dialogue, conversations, and puzzles. And there's a path you can take through the game that primarily focuses on hand-to-hand combat. Fate of Atlantis is very ambitious.
Yeah, wow.
And so, yeah, this was their follow-up, this action-adventure game that basically kind of takes from Tomb Raider. And at the time, this game was honestly kind of seen as a disappointment. People just kind of looked at this and went, well, I mean, this game came out in 99, and by that point, Tomb Raider 3 was already out. And so people had seen this gameplay come and go, and many people argued the control of Indy in this game is clunkier. And it is. He definitely controls a little slower. And there's many aspects I can understand why people would look down on this one, but genuinely, the variety of locations, the overall level design, the writing of the storyline. I actually really like the story of this game too. I really do think Hal Barwood's a good writer, and the villain in this game that we're going to see in a little bit into this level here also is cool, and I like what they do with him towards the end of the story. This is another game where it just goes hard into, exploring ancient civilizations that have long... basically, Zach, if you want to know, Infernal Machine's about Babylon. I'm trying to find the ancient city of Babylon And that basically was making futuristic technology long before, that was even like a thing that we thought could be possible. So like in that previous cutscene, we saw Sophia hand us a gear, and that gear was apparently connected to an ancient like BC elevator. They were actually building elevators back in their era. So Indy's like, okay, I'm interested. I guess I'll figure out what's going on here. And so now we've thrown ourselves right into the middle of a Russian base camp where they're building over the ruins of Babylon. But as you can see here, the gameplay is fairly slow-paced. It's a lot of just judging judging the environment carefully, making your jumps when it feels right, and there's also tons of secret areas with treasures you can collect. Here's the villain.
That socialist theory disavows the existence of supernatural powers.
Those doctrinaire apparatchiki. What is it? They think I'm out here searching for God?
Possibly. I'm just decoding the message, sir.
I'm searching for Marduk, a creature the Babylonians worshipped as a god, but he doesn't live in heaven, just on another plane.
What kind of plane, sir? Soviet or American?
Not airplane, you idiot. It's another dimension of reality. The Ethereum.
Be careful, Professor. When questions of ideology arise, they often conceal doubts about methods and results.
In Foreign Ministerstva, we're making excellent progress, all according to plan. We know the true story is waiting in the room of the tablets. That's where we'll find out what happened to the tower and to the machine Marduk inspired. We are close. It's a matter of days. And damn the ideology!
So he's fun, and we're going to encounter him multiple times as we travel across the world throughout this adventure. Just a lot of variety in the environments, too, and especially when you start getting into entire temples built around the futuristic Babylonian technology, there's some really good art design in this game. I truly do find this game to be underrated.
An operation the Russians have going here. Makes me jealous. The site is crawling with guards. I better steer clear.
So this is actually a choice here. When I first did this level, I actually just saw if I could charge through and kill all the Russians and go through the base camp. You totally can. You actually can totally go down there and fight your way through them and make it that way. But I'm taking the alternate route this time, which requires you to go through some ancient temples.
We've also developed new Keeping Busy technology, post-commentary.
Yes, so this video is one of our first in quite some time, or might be our first Keeping Busy, where we're doing it entirely pre-recorded, and I also am cutting between sections where I was getting stuck or kept falling off of something, so that way we can just get to the meat of where the next section is. Yeah, so this does take us out. This takes us out to the Russian base camp, but it also takes us to where a bunch of explosive barrels are that makes short work of the Russians. That way you can deal with the ones that remain.
Do you have infinite ammo?
In that pistol, yes. In all the other pistols that you gain and all the other weapons you grab, no. Because you can take any weapons that you get off of the Russians' bodies.
Well, that gun clipped into the
So
scenery.
yeah, Zach, so like many games of this type, you're simply trying to line up with them, and then your gun auto aims. But it's like it was in Tomb Raider, it can get very clunky, and the camera is not always on your side.
A gun.
But the game is also pretty generous with health items. On top of course, that shop you go to in between levels where you spend your treasure money to buy more stuff. I usually buy a couple health items too. I never felt overwhelmed in this game where I was just dying over and over and over again. And even if that was a problem, you can save anywhere and just reload anywhere.
Aha. A medical kit.
So, like I said, this had a PC version, which was what we're seeing here, and it also had a pretty rare Nintendo 64 version. It's actually one of the rarer games on that system. And that version was released after the PC version, and it completely retextured and remastered all the graphics. Many elements that you're seeing here, like the rope on that fence that is 2D, are rendered in 3D in the N64 version. And overall, the textures in the N64 version just look better. I think the music's a little more higher quality on the N64. I forget whether there's this extra story stuff or not, but the main thing they add in the N64 version is that instead of having to slowly cycle through your items in the pause menu like this, in the N64 version, they have the Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time C-stick controls where you can assign different items in Indy's inventory to different buttons on the C-stick that you can immediately change to, which is very helpful. Unfortunately, though, if you try to play the N64 version on an emulator, it crashes. It was something about the way Factor 5, which Factor 5 was the development house that ported the N64 version, they just, whatever reason, it was pushing the hardware in a way that was unique to that cartridge. So when you try to emulate it, I guess N64 emulators just have some sort of issue, and it always just crashes on me when I try to play it. So if I was going to play the N64 version of this game, I'd probably try original hardware. But like I said, the cartridge for this version is very expensive, which is why when I saw, for example, let's just say certain YouTubers that do one-off videos of games playing the N64 version of this game, not even finishing the first level and writing the game off as bad, I got very angry because all I could do was just grumble under my breath. Well, if you're just going to put the game on a shelf after this video's over, can I have it? Because clearly you don't care about this game and you're not going to play it, so I'll happily take the N64 version and give it a shot. The only disadvantage, though, Zach, despite the fact that the N64 version has tons of quality of life improvements over the PC version, it also, one, has some glitches that are bad, pretty bad, and two, you only can save through autosave checkpoints as you play the levels, while in the PC version you can save anywhere at any time and reload at any time. So it's a take and give sort of thing.
First aid. Look what I found. First aid.
Get used to all of Indiana Jones's line cues because he says them for everything he finds.
A gun? The way he says a gun makes it sound like he just discovered a murder, but he's the one that did the murdering, but he forgot. A gun. Somebody must have been shot.
Well, just like in the movies, he is, the predecessor to Nathan Drake. He's just going around picking, so what entire race of people am I going to slaughter in this film? And this time around, yes, it's the Russians. Because actually, the interesting thing, timeline-wise about Infernal Machine, Zach, is that this is actually set in the 40s, the late 40s, while most of the indie films of the trilogy are set in the 30s. So this is, late 40s. Indiana Jones is a bit older. I think this is even after. I think this is a little. Yeah, this would be a little before Crystal Skull. So this would be during the Cold War era, which is why the enemies are Russians.
Can you get a fridge power up?
No, you cannot get a fridge power up, and thankfully nothing that stupid happens in the story of this game. So yeah, now we gotta jump on top of one of the trucks coming through this checkpoint, which this is pretty clunky. I think you're supposed to jump up from the top of the walls there and land on the truck, but I can never get it to work right, or I can never get Indiana Jones's jump to line up right. So instead, I just ended up going to one of the smaller pillars next to where the truck drives by and just jumping from there, and somehow I made it. Which is funny because from that angle, the Russians inside the truck would see you pretty clearly, so I don't know.
Do you want this to be a stealth section?
I guess not.
Okay.
Oh, there is one. While Indiana Jones, like I said, does control clunkier than Lara Croft, one thing I actually think is an improvement is that I much prefer the way Indiana Jones's jump works in comparison to Laura. So the way I guess I would explain this is Laura needs a bit of a run before she can do a jump, which, you know, is more realistic. Indy will jump, like, while you're running, if you hit the jump button, Indy will jump the second you tap the jump button, which feels a lot better. Oh no, come back! Oh well. So now we have to wait a while for it to come back, but thankfully I did a fade here, so that way we won't have to wait until the next truck lines up.
I've never played... Well, that's not true. I played I played a demo of one of the Tomb Raider games. I don't remember which one it was, but I think whichever one it was, it had a tiger, and I got scared and I stopped playing the demo. And then I think my uncle owned the Sega Saturn version of one of the Tomb Raider games, and I think I got to play that a little bit, but didn't like it very much because my brain couldn't handle how clunky it was.
Yeah. Well, you'll be happy to know, Zach, that the recently released Tomb Raider 1 to 3 Remastered Collection does have a modern control scheme that you can switch to. So if you ever wanted to give those games a shot, you can play it with full analog control instead of tank controls. I ended up just, when I've been playing it, I've just been using the tank controls just because that's kind of how the game was designed.
Aha. Some medicine.
So yes, that's primarily for scorpions and snakes that we've seen so far. If they get us, it'll tack on poison damage that won't go away until you use a poison kit, which thankfully are pretty common, as you can see. Oh, another treasure.
Look what I found.
I also like the little, like, music cue that you get whenever you pick up a treasure item. Laura doesn't get those. Like, from what I've played of Tomb Raider 1 so far, it's just silent when she picks up a treasure. And I'm like, but I need that endorphins. Ha, War of Attrition won this time.
A gun.
So this is a battle rifle. It does a little more damage than the standard pistols we've been picking up. We also got a machine pistol too, but it only has like 5 ammo in it, so I don't really use it. I also love that whenever he uses the whip, it's all they do that little scripted event musical cue of Indiana Jones's theme. So using the whip to swing across things in Infernal Machine is entirely scripted, as you can probably guess, Zach, by looking at it. You're just like hitting a button, and then it flips to a little cutscene of him swinging across the chasm. In the game's sequel, Emperor's Tomb, you are fully controlling the swinging with the whip when you're doing it, but it does feel pretty clunky there. Most Indiana Jones games just haven't been able to make it feel quite right.
Have you ever played that Wii game? Staff of Kings, I think it's called. I think you brought it up to me once in high school or something.
Yep, when that game came out, I got it. I was actually quite excited for Staff of Kings. That came out in 2009 for the Wii, PS2, DS, and PSP. And I've played a little bit of every version. I still need to play more of the DS version to give it more of a fair try. I actually really like the PSP version. It has a lot of effort put into it, and the way it works is that every level is a different gimmick. It's not always mini games, but it's usually like sometimes it's combat, sometimes it's dodging around traps, but it's always something new, and it has a good story with good voice acting built on top of it. I actually like the PSP version. The Wii game, I have not played it on PS2, but it's the same. The PS2 version is the same version as the Wii. Except, of course, the Wii's gimmick that made it unique was that, hey, it's an Indiana Jones game entirely based around motion controls, so you really feel like you're Indiana Jones. Swing the Wii remote forward to do a light punch. Swing it in an arc to do a heavy punch. What's that? It doesn't work very well, and it's never consistent. Oh, well, too bad. It's a shame because I actually like they tried to do the same stuff as like Emperor's Tomb, where you're able to use the environment for environmental kills, which do work pretty well. It's just that everything's a little more scripted in Staff of Kings because it's based around motion controls and they know that you can't be super precise. Once again, I actually like the story in Staff of Kings quite a bit. I think it's a good, like, straightforward, simple, good Indiana Jones story. Like, all the Indiana Jones games, for the most part, like, these main ones. Fate of Atlantis, Infernal Machine, sort of Emperor's Tomb, and Staff of Kings all have pretty well-written stories with good voice acting. They all, like, feel like they try to live up to the quality of the film storytelling. Staff of Kings, Zach, I kind of want you to play it with me at some point, because it actually has a co-op mode that's an entirely new, completely different story mode with a whole new story and cutscenes where you play in co-op as Indiana Jones and his dad.
Oh, okay.
And I've always been wanting to try it just to see what that even is. But yeah, once again, despite the fact that it's kind of a clunky game based around kind of crappy motion controls, Staff of Kings is also very ambitious and has a bunch of extras in different modes. The Indiana Jones games, many of them are underwhelming in some respects, but they always try, for the most part. The main ones, anyway, developed by LucasArts and all that. They always try to be interesting games that are trying to do something different with the character, even if, you know, they may be clunky or they don't work right, and that's what always has endeared me to them. Yeah, maybe we do Staff of Kings at some point if I could get it to work right. Like, for example, this game, Infernal Machine, also had a Game Boy Color version. They tried to recreate the level design of this on the Game Boy Color, and it works about as well as you might expect.
Why? Why would they do that?
I don't know, Zach. They tried to do it like sort of like an overhead isometric kind of looking, but it controls awful, and it just feels bad. See how we're in a little underwater maze now.
Reminds me of Alone in the Dark on Game Boy Color, where they tried to keep, like, the 3D graphics, and why?
Oh, oh yeah, Alone in the Dark: The New Nightmare on Game Boy Color, where they actually tried to do the rendered background. Like, to be fair, that game I actually think works more than it doesn't, and I kind of respect it for what it is. Infernal Machine doesn't even go that far. It just tries to do kind of an overhead version of these levels, and it feels like crap. So yeah, I've been maybe exploring more than I should be in this underwater maze. I just want to find all the treasures. That way I can buy health items. And I can see why some people would look at this game and go, this looks boring. And I get it. I find Infernal Machine very relaxing, and I really like the level design and just the variety of the environments. It's clunky, but it has a lot of charm. It's actually prevalent that we're doing this right now, Zach, because as you, I think you would be aware, they're putting out a new Indiana Jones game apparently just this year. It doesn't have like an official release date yet, but it's coming out late this year.
Yeah, that's right. I did hear about that. I actually completely forgot until you mentioned it.
Yes, Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, which is being made by Machine Games that made the new Wolfenstein games. I mean, that's coming out on Xbox Series X and S as well as Windows, which I do not have an Xbox Series system, so I'm like, I'm not going to be able to run that on my PC. So I don't know how I'm going to play it unless it eventually gets a PS5 port. But that's going to be like an FPS Indiana Jones game, which I'm going to guess it's probably going to be less actual FPS shooting and probably more like adventure game elements in first person like these games. Which, yeah, I think that'd be a cool twist to do a new Indiana Jones game with.
Hey, остановись! Здравствуйте, товарищ. Open the door. I'm here to deliver supplies, you know, dig stuff. Whatever you need, I've got it.
Ты шпион? Мне прекрасно стрелять шпионов.
What?
Hello, Dr. Jones. Welcome to Babel. I'm Simon Turner. Remember? CIA? Sophia works for me.
Oh, you stole the cogwheel.
And our commie friends don't even know it's gone. Volodnikov's a hopeless academic, not a field man, and frankly, I need clues he doesn't have. That's why you got tapped. You're a famous archaeologist. I'm just a spy. This should get you through the door. By the way, rumor has it they found a gold statuette of the winged god Marduk. Be awful nice to have that.
CIA runs a museum.
The company runs a hive of soulless bureaucrats, but I am a passionate collector.
I'll bet you are.
It belongs in a museum.
Yeah, that's pretty much how Indy feels.
I do like these cutscenes. I do think the voice acting, like you mentioned, is pretty good.
Yeah, they get a decent sound alike for Indiana Jones, and he does go on to play Indiana Jones. He also played Indiana Jones in the voice version of... uh-oh.
Goodbye.
Oh, well. I just wanted to show that death off, but anyway. Okay, anyway, back to where we were. But yeah, it's the same sound alike that played in Indiana Jones in the voiced version of Fate of Atlantis. He also would go on to play Indy in Emperor's Tomb and also Staff of Kings. It's just the same guy that just does a good impression of Harrison in all these games. And he's good. I like him. So, if this game looks interesting to you, and if, despite how really awfully clunky the combat looks, if you think you can stomach that just to enjoy its story, atmosphere, and these environments, and puzzles and all that, you can get this game. Probably your best option, if you're interested in playing this, is actually to get it on Good Old Games. The Steam version is not patched and doesn't run super well. I've tried it on Steam, and it sucks. Get it on GOG. They have the game fully patched, and they also allow it to run in widescreen at 1080p without cropping out the UI. It looks good. Like, I didn't even really need to touch it at all in the options menu to make it look like this. I just hit play, and it runs well. If you're a sucker for the feel of the old Tomb Raider games, then you'll definitely probably get a kick out of this if you're looking for something a little different. This game feels like what it is. It feels like these people saw the Tomb Raider games, went, well, wait a second, they're just doing Indiana Jones. We should just make an Indiana Jones version of this. And then it came out, and you can tell it's their first time making a game like this. It's kind of clunky, but I think that its writing and its level design does make up for its issues. Even if the reviewers at the time didn't agree. So I hope if this looks cool to you, you might give it a chance if you've already played like Emperor's Tomb and some of the other Indiana Jones games. Infernal Machine deserves its light, and I hope one day they make some sort of remaster of it that combines like some of the graphics of the N64 version and, basically put all of the strengths of each version together and make a better version of it. But as it is, at this point, I'm going to guess that all we're going to get is just the nicely patched GOG PC version. So we're going to do one more puzzle here before we stop.
Is there any reason to use the other pistols than Indy's infinite ammo pistol?
I think they do a little more damage.
Okay, that was my first thought. Maybe they fire a little bit faster too.
So I'm actually playing this with my Xbox Series X controller, which shockingly works with the game without any issues. So GOG must have also added in Xbox controller support.
A good digger would have found this long ago.
And because of that, this game was actually made to be played with a keyboard. Like in that kind of way where 1 is how you bring out the whip, 2 is how you bring out the pistol and all your other weapons and so on.
Didn't quite work.
So when I'm playing it with a controller, I can't really switch between weapons. So many times, like not effectively. So many times I'm either pausing the game to switch in the in-game menu, or I'm reaching over to my keyboard and hitting a number. But otherwise, I think that the platforming and the combat controls a little better with the controller.
Sophia's little gift has a purpose.
So yep, a real Babylonian elevator. They were really building them
This might
after
be
all.
important. This looks like a door to me. Why doesn't it open?
And this is just the beginning. This is actually quite a lengthy little game with a lot of puzzles and content and all kinds of twists and turns in the story.
Okay. Where
Yeah, but Brandon, I can see one problem with it though. I can see why certain people wouldn't like this game.
Well,
Why not?
that's easy. They've been
It's not Legend of Zelda and it's not Tomb Raider. Like I don't know how you're supposed to like this. It's not that. How dare?
Yeah. Well, we're going to wrap it up there because that's where the video leaves off in the ancient Babylonian library. So if you're able to stomach it, even though it's not Zelda or Tomb Raider and it's a clunky old late 90s action-adventure game, I think you'll still be rewarded by what the game has to offer. So that all said, let us know if you'd like to see more of this, other Indiana Jones games and whatnot, and we'll join you next time on the next installment of Keeping BZ. Have a good night.